The news spread through the Grand Celestial Hotel like wildfire. Within hours, it jumped to communication networks throughout the solar system. Within days, everyone in human space was talking about it. The Dragon Empress had come to ask humanity for help, and only a hotel maid who cleaned rooms had been able to understand her. Katie found herself in an impossible situation. She was not a diplomat or a politician. She was a 23-year-old woman who cleaned hotel rooms for a living. She just happened to have a special way of hearing sounds. But now she was the only human who could communicate with the Empress. That made her the most important translator in all of human space. The hotel's ballroom became a diplomatic center. Important people from Earth's government arrived on fast ships. Military advisors came. Humanitarian organizations sent representatives. Everyone wanted to know what the dragon wanted and what humanity should do, and Katie was at the center of it all. She tried to teach others what she had learned, but teaching the dragon language proved very difficult. Most humans simply could not hear the layered harmonics properly. They could learn simple versions, enough for basic communication. But the deeper meanings, the emotional context, the cultural weight behind certain phrases, those remained accessible only to Katie. She spent her days in the ballroom with the Empress now. She was learning the full story, and it was worse than anyone had first understood. The dragons called themselves the Crystal. The word meant something like, those who remember Stone and Star. They were an ancient race millions of years older than humanity. They had never been numerous or tried to build an empire, but they had been powerful and long-lived. A single dragon could watch entire civilizations rise and fall. They could remember the positions of stars across thousands of years, but their power and memory had not saved them from the Vex. The Empress sang of the Vex, and Katie struggled to translate the concept. They were not exactly a species. They were more like a force, a corruption that spread through space itself. They consumed not just life but meaning. They turned worlds into empty husks where even the laws of physics became uncertain. They had appeared in dragon space 50 years ago. At first it was just a few ships, just a small problem. Now 5 dragon homeworlds had fallen. The crystal fleets were scattered and broken. Their population, which had never been large, had been cut by more than half. They were dying as a species, and the Vex kept coming, kept spreading, kept consuming. She says they have tried fighting, Katie translated to the assembled humans. Her voice was tight with emotion. They tried running. They tried everything they could think of. But the Vex adapt. They learn. Every strategy works once, then never again. Admiral Gregory Stone was the senior military officer present. He was a tall man with gray hair and a serious face. He leaned forward in his chair. Ask her why they think we can help, he said. Humanity has never encountered these Vex. We do not have any special weapons against them. Katie sang the question to the Empress. The dragon's response was long and complex. Katie had to ask for clarification several times before she fully understood. She says it is not about weapons, Katie finally translated. The dragons are old. They think in terms of centuries and millennia. They are powerful but inflexible in their thinking. Humans are young and adaptable. We are unpredictable. She believes that humanity's chaos, our constant innovation, might be exactly what is needed to fight something that adapts to order and pattern. She is asking us to teach them how to be chaotic. Admiral Stone sounded skeptical. No, Katie said carefully. She is asking us to fight alongside them, to bring our unpredictability to a war that is killing them because they cannot change fast enough. The room went completely silent. Everyone understood the weight of what was being asked. This was not a simple request for help. This was a call to war. Linda Shaw, the elderly historian, spoke up. The promise 600 years ago was for sanctuary, to shelter them if they needed it. We can offer that without entering a war. The Empress sang before Katie could translate Linda's words. It was as if the dragon had understood the tone, even if not the exact words. Her response was fierce and proud. Katie translated with difficulty. She says the Crystal do not abandon their worlds lightly. They are not asking for sanctuary because they will not run while they still have strength to fight. They are asking for alliance. They want humanity to honor the spirit of the old promise, not just the letter of it. Their ancestors gave humans the tools to survive when they were dying in space. Now they ask for the same thing. Admiral Stone stood up. His face was stern. That is not a decision we can make here and now. This requires approval from the highest levels of government. We are talking about committing humanity to an interstellar war against an enemy we do not understand. Against an enemy we have never even seen. How long will that approval process take? Katie asked. Weeks at minimum. Probably months. There are protocols, committees, risk assessments that must be done. Katie turned to the Empress and sang an explanation. The dragon's response was a falling melody filled with resignation and understanding. She says her people do not have months. Katie translated softly. Another homeworld will fall within weeks. The Vex are accelerating their attacks. Every day humanity spends debating as another day her species dies. Someone in the back of the room spoke up. Then maybe she should have arrived with more evidence. We cannot commit to war based on one dragon's word. The Empress's head swung toward the speaker. For the first time since arriving at the hotel, she looked truly angry. Her scales darkened to pure black. Her eyes blazed like fire. When she sang, it was with a sharp edge that made Katie flinch. She says, Katie translated, her voice shaking slightly, that she crossed half the galaxy alone to find a species that promised aid 600 years ago. She left her people in their darkest hour because she believed in humanity's honor. She has learned that dragons can be wrong about civilizations they think they understand. The Empress stood up to her full height. It made everyone in the room step back instinctively. She sang again, quieter now but with terrible sadness in every note. She is leaving, Katie said, her heart sinking. She thanks us for trying to understand. She releases humanity from the ancient debt. She will return to her people and tell them that the humans they once saved have moved beyond remembering old promises. Wait, Katie said urgently, stepping forward. Please wait. The Empress looked down at her. This small human had been the only one to truly hear her voice, to truly try to understand. Katie sang in the dragon tongue, struggling to find the right phrases. Not all humans counsel slow, but some humans remember honor, personally answer call. The Empress tilted her massive head. She sang a question back. What could one human do against a force that was destroying an entire ancient civilization? Katie looked back at all the assembled officials, the military advisors, the bureaucrats who would debate and delay while a species died. Then she looked at Vincent Harper, her boss, standing at the edge of the room. She looked at Helen Price, her friend and mentor. She looked at the other hotel staff who had gathered to watch history unfold. She turned back to the Empress and sang clearly. Take me with you. I will come now. I will help however I can. One human who remembers what promises mean. The room exploded in noise. Everyone started shouting at once. Admiral Stone stepped forward, his voice sharp with authority. Absolutely not. You are a civilian with no training. And you are our only translator. We need you here. For what? Katie turned on him, her voice rising. To help you have comfortable conversations while you debate and form committees? She does not have time for our process. Her people are dying right now, today, while we talk. Vincent Harper pushed through the crowd. Katie, think about this carefully. You would be going into a war zone. You have no military training, no experience with alien environments. This could be suicide. Then come with me, Katie said, looking him straight in the eye. Anyone who wants to actually help instead of just talking about helping, come with me. She is not asking for Earth's armies or governments. She is asking for people who understand what a promise means. The Empress watched this exchange with her golden eyes. She understood the conflict, even if she could not follow all the words. She sang softly to Katie, a gentle, declining melody. Katie understood what the dragon was saying. The Empress was telling her no. She could not accept such a sacrifice. One human would make no difference anyway in a war that was consuming worlds. You are wrong, Katie sang back firmly. One human made all the difference 600 years ago. The colony ship crew that your ancestors saved, they were just regular people. Let me try. Let us try. Before anyone could stop her, Katie walked right up to the Empress. She reached out and placed her hand on the dragon's scaled forearm. The contact was electric and warm. She could feel ancient power thrumming just beneath the surface of those scales. She sang in the clearest voice she could manage. I choose to honor the debt. I choose to help. Take me with you. The Empress's golden eyes studied Katie for a long, silent moment. Then she sang a phrase that Katie had learned meant something close to, witnessed and accepted by the stars. It was a formal acknowledgement. A binding agreement between two beings. This is completely insane, Admiral Stone said. But his voice had lost some of its certainty. He looked at Katie standing next to the massive dragon, her hand still resting on those ancient scales. No, Linda Shaw said quietly. Everyone turned to look at the elderly historian. She stepped forward slowly, her joints stiff with age. This is exactly what the original promise meant. Not governments and committees making careful decisions. Individual humans making individual choices to help when help is needed. That is what the colony ship crew did 600 years ago. They did not wait for authorization from Earth. They accepted help when it was offered and promised to return it someday. She looked directly at Katie with respect in her eyes. I am 78 years old. I have spent my entire life studying humanity's first contacts with alien species. I would be honored to come along if you will have me. The Empress sang a welcoming phrase that needed no translation. Then Helen Price stepped forward. She looked nervous but determined. I have xenosocial training from university. I can help coordinate between species and manage group dynamics. She glanced at Vincent. If you are willing to lose your assistant manager. Vincent stood frozen for a moment. His mouth opened and closed. Then he laughed, a slightly wild sound. My entire senior staff is volunteering for what might be suicide missions. Why should I be any different? He raised his voice so everyone could hear. The Grand Celestial Hotel officially offers its services to the Crystal. Any staff member who wants to volunteer will keep their job and benefits. No one will be punished for this choice. And I am coming too because someone needs to make sure you all do not get yourselves killed immediately. More people began stepping forward. A maintenance engineer named Carl Wright raised his hand. I have always wanted to see real alien technology. How it works, how it is built. Maybe I can help. A security officer named Lydia Grant came forward next. I feel bad for thinking the Empress was just a dangerous creature. I want to make that right. A chef from the hotel's main restaurant, Marcus Lopez, stepped up with a slight smile. Even a war zone needs decent food. People have to eat, right? And I am curious what dragons consider good cooking. One by one, others volunteered. A medical technician named Susan Clark. A communications specialist named Alex Turner. A young botanist named Chris Lane, who thought he might help with food production on long space voyages. A maintenance worker named Beth Cooper, who was good at fixing broken things. Within an hour, 17 humans had volunteered. They were not soldiers or trained warriors. They were hotel staff mostly. Regular people with regular jobs. But they had heard a call for help and decided to answer it. Admiral Stone watched this with a mixture of frustration and something that might have been admiration. Finally, he sighed deeply. I cannot officially support this, he said. The military cannot be seen endorsing unauthorized civilian missions into alien war zones. But, he paused, I can make sure you have supplies, basic weapons training for those who want it, communication equipment, so you can stay in contact with human space, and I will personally make sure the bureaucrats back on Earth understand what real courage looks like. Maybe it will speed up their decision-making process. He looked directly at Katie. And when the politicians finally get their act together and approve military aid, you had better still be alive to see it. The preparations took 2 full days. The Empress's ship was unlike anything humans had built. It looked organic, like it had been grown rather than constructed. It was powered by something the dragons called star breath, an energy source humanity did not understand. The ship could expand its interior spaces to accommodate the human volunteers, but just barely. Katie spent those 2 days teaching everything she had learned about the dragon language to the xenolinguists. She recorded every pattern, every phrase, every emotional context she had discovered. Other people would continue the work of building understanding between the species. But she would not be there to see it. On the morning of departure, Katie stood in the ballroom one last time. Her parents had called from Earth. They had cried and begged her not to go. She had tried to explain about promises and honor, and the look in the Empress's eyes when she thought no one would help. They had not understood. Maybe no one who was not there could truly understand. The Empress entered the ballroom. With her came 3 other dragons. They had been waiting on her ship this whole time, too large and too frightening to bring into the hotel station. Now they stood in the ballroom, and Katie saw them properly for the first time. One was a warrior dragon with scales like burnished copper. His body was covered in scars from old battles. Another was an elder dragon whose eyes held depths of time that made Katie feel dizzy to look into. The third was a younger dragon, barely adult, with scales that shimmered like silver. Her voice rang like crystal bells when she sang. The Empress introduced them, singing their names and histories. The warrior was Commander Chris, He had held a colony world against the Vex for 3 months with only a handful of defenders. The elder was called Wise in Ancient Patterns. He was a keeper of dragon history and knowledge. The youth was bright wing rising. She was the Empress's own daughter. Katie understood the significance immediately. The Empress had brought her family, her most trusted people. This was not just accepting help from strangers. This was sharing the burden of survival with a species they barely knew. This was trust. She sang greetings to each dragon. Her voice was stronger now, more confident in the musical language. They responded with warmth, with hope, with the first signs Katie had seen of dragons expressing something like joy. The 17 human volunteers boarded the dragon ship together. It was vast inside, bigger than it looked from outside. The corridors seemed to shift and flow as they walked. The lighting felt alive somehow, pulsing gently. There was a viewing area where space was visible all around them. It felt like flying through the stars with nothing protecting you but air. As the ship prepared to depart, Katie stood with the Empress on what she understood was the command deck. Below them, Neptune gleamed blue and cold in the darkness of space. The Grand Celestial Hotel shone like a diamond against the black. "Do you really think we can help?" Katie sang to the Empress. 17 humans and whatever resources we bring, against an enemy that has destroyed 5 worlds. The Empress's response was complex and layered with meanings Katie was still learning to fully understand. But she grasped the core of it. It was not about numbers or weapons. It was about what those 17 humans represented. Humanity choosing to honor an old debt. Humanity proving that some things mattered more than safety or careful logic. Promises made and remembered. Honor kept across centuries. The Vex consume meaning, the Empress sang. They thrive where honor is forgotten, where connections between beings break down. 17 humans crossing the galaxy to help strangers, that is meaning. That is what the Vex cannot adapt to or consume. The ship folded space in a way Katie did not understand. One moment Neptune and the hotel were there. The next moment they were gone. Ahead lay a journey of weeks to reach the embattled dragon worlds. Behind them, Katie hoped, humanity's governments were finally realizing what their ordinary citizens had already known. Some promises were worth keeping no matter the cost or danger. Katie moved to a viewing port and looked out at the stars streaming past. She hummed softly to herself, practicing new phrases the Empress had taught her, the language of dragons, the song of stone and stars, the voice of a species fighting for survival. And in that song, Katie heard something new forming, a harmony between human and dragon voices learning to sing together. It was not much. It might not be enough to turn the tide of a war, but it was a beginning. It was hope. Somewhere behind them, back at the Grand Celestial Hotel, the xenolinguists continued their work on the dragon language. Admiral Stone sent his reports to Earth, pushing for action. Debates raged in government halls about the wisdom of entering an alien war, and ahead of them, dragon worlds burned and waited. The Vex continued their advance, consuming meaning and matter, spreading their empty corruption through space, but now, for the first time in 50 years of losing ground, the Crystal had something they had not had before. They had allies who had come simply because it was the right thing to do. 17 humans who had heard a dragon's cry for help and answered without being ordered, without being paid, without any guarantee of survival. It would not save everyone. Wars never did. But as the ship jumped through fold space toward the distant war zone, Katie felt something she had not expected to feel. Pride. The journey through fold space took 3 weeks. For Katie and the other humans, it was a time of learning and preparation. The dragon ship did not move through space in a way they could understand. It folded reality, stepped between points that should have been impossibly far apart. Sometimes Katie looked out the viewing ports and saw colors that had no names. Sometimes she saw nothing at all, just empty blackness that felt deeper than space should feel. Commander Chris took charge of preparing the humans for what they would face. He was a warrior through and through, scarred and serious. With Katie translating, he taught them about the Vex. They do not kill quickly, Chris sang, his copper scales darkening with remembered pain. They corrupt slowly. A Vex ship approaches a world and begins to change reality around it. First, small things stop making sense. Water flows upward. Light casts shadows in the wrong direction. Then larger things fail. Electronics stop working. Biological processes become confused. Eventually, everything simply stops meaning anything at all. Katie translated, her voice quiet. The other humans listened with growing horror. "How do you fight something like that?" Vincent asked. Chris sang his response. Katie translated. "You fight by maintaining meaning, by holding on to purpose and connection. The Vex cannot corrupt what refuses to lose meaning. That is why they are so dangerous to my people. Dragons live so long that meaning becomes abstract to us. We forget why we fight beyond simple survival. But humans," he looked at Katie with his ancient eyes, "humans seem to find meaning in everything, even small things." Over those 3 weeks, the humans and dragons learned to live together. Marcus Lopez discovered that dragons appreciated food that was heavily spiced and very hot. Their internal temperature was so high that they could eat things that would burn a human's mouth. But they also enjoyed the concept of combining flavors in unexpected ways, something dragon cuisine apparently did not do. Carl Wright spent hours studying the ship's systems with wise and ancient patterns. The old dragon was patient with Carl's endless questions. The ship's technology was not mechanical, not really. It was biological, grown from a combination of crystal and organic matter. It responded to thought and need as much as to physical commands. "It is like the ship is alive," Carl said in wonder. "It is alive," Katie translated for wise and ancient patterns. "All dragon technology grows. We do not build dead things and force them to work. We cultivate living things and teach them purpose." Lydia Grant trained with Commander Chris in combat techniques. She learned that dragons fought very differently from humans. They relied on their natural strength and fire breath. But they also used something Chris called harmony breaking. By singing certain discordant notes, a dragon could disrupt the Vex's ability to corrupt reality around them. "Can humans do that?" Lydia asked through Katie. Chris sang thoughtfully. "I do not know. No human has ever tried. Your voices are different from ours. But different might be exactly what we need." Katie spent most of her time with Brightwing Rising, the Empress's daughter. The young dragon was curious about everything human. She asked endless questions about Earth, about human culture, about why humans lived such short lives and what they did with their limited time. "It must be terrifying," Brightwing Rising sang one day, "to know you will die so soon. I am barely adult and I have already lived longer than most humans ever will." Katie thought about how to answer. "It is not terrifying once you accept it," she said. "Our short lives make each moment more precious. We cannot wait centuries to do things. We have to live now fully because we do not have unlimited time." Brightwing Rising considered this. "Perhaps that is why you answered my mother's call. You do not have time to waste on endless debate." "Perhaps," Katie agreed. The Empress herself spent time with each human, learning their names, their stories, their reasons for coming. She sang to Susan Clark about medicine and healing. She discussed logistics with Helen Price. She talked philosophy with Linda Shaw, two being separated by millions of years of evolution finding common ground in questions about meaning and purpose. And then, on the 22nd day of travel, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Katie ran to the command deck with the others. The Empress was already there, along with Chris and Wise in Ancient Patterns. Through the viewing ports, Katie saw something that made her stomach turn. A planet hung in space ahead of them, but it was wrong. Half of it looked normal, with blue oceans and green continents, but the other half was gray and empty. Not destroyed, just empty. Like someone had erased meaning from reality and left nothing behind. "The colony world Chris defended," the Empress sang. "It has fallen since we left. The Vex have taken the rest of it." Katie translated for the others. Several people gasped or made sounds of distress. "There are still survivors," Chris sang, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "I can feel them. Dragons holding the last city, singing the songs of meaning to keep the Vex at bay. But they are tired. They will not last much longer." "Then we help them," Katie said immediately. The Empress looked at her. "This was not the plan. We were meant to reach the fleet staging area first, to integrate you slowly into our forces." "Plans change," Katie said. She looked at the other humans. "We came to help. There are people down there who need help right now." "What do we do?" Vincent stepped forward. "We help. That is what we do." One by one, the other humans nodded or spoke agreement. Lydia checked her weapons. Marcus started preparing emergency rations. Carl asked Wise in Ancient Patterns how to operate the ship's defensive systems. The Empress sang something that Katie understood as profound respect. Then she gave orders. The ship dove toward the planet. The last dragon city was a fortress of crystal and stone built into a mountain range. From space, Katie could see the Vex corruption spreading toward it like a gray tide. The ship landed in a courtyard where exhausted dragons rested between shifts of singing the harmony songs that held back the corruption. When the Empress emerged from the ship, the defenders sang with joy and relief. When 17 humans followed her out, they sang with confusion and hope mixed together. Commander Chris took charge immediately. He organized the defenders, giving the exhausted dragons time to rest. Katie and the other humans joined the dragons on the walls of the city. Katie had never seen the Vex directly before. Now she understood why they were so terrifying. They were not ships or creatures. They were patches of wrongness in reality itself. Areas where physics did not work properly, where cause and effect became disconnected, where meaning drained away into nothing. The dragons sang their harmony songs. The sound was beautiful and desperate. It created a wall of meaning, of purpose that the Vex could not cross. But Katie could see the dragons were exhausted. Their voices were growing weaker. The wall would not hold much longer. "We need to help them sing," Katie said to the others. "Our voices are different. Maybe that will help." "We do not know the songs," Helen protested. "Then we make new ones," Katie said. She thought about what Chris had taught them, about maintaining meaning and purpose. She thought about why they had come, what they were fighting for. She began to sing, not in the dragon language, but in her own human voice. She sang about promises kept across centuries, about 17 people choosing to help strangers, about a hotel maid learning to hear the music in an alien voice, about meaning and connection and refusing to let those things die. Her voice was small compared to the dragons. But it was different. It cut through the air in a way dragon voices did not. The others joined her. Vincent sang off-key but loud. Marcus had a surprisingly good voice. Linda's voice was thin with age but strong with conviction. Together, the humans created their own harmony. And something changed. The wall of meaning that the dragons had been maintaining grew stronger. The Vex corruption slowed its advance. The patches of wrongness began to shrink back. The dragons noticed. They changed their own songs, weaving them together with the human voices. Dragon and human harmonies intertwined, creating something neither species could have made alone. For 6 hours they sang together. The humans' throats grew raw. The dragons grew hoarse. But they did not stop. And slowly, incredibly, the Vex began to retreat from the city. When the gray tide finally pulled back completely, when the corruption receded beyond the horizon, everyone collapsed in exhaustion. Katie sat on the crystal wall, her voice completely gone, tears streaming down her face. The Empress settled beside her. She sang softly, a healing song that soothed Katie's burning throat. "You were right," the Empress sang. "One human can make a difference. 17 humans can change the course of a battle. Imagine what we could do with more. With thousands, with humanity and the crystal truly fighting side by side." Katie could not sing back. Her voice was gone. But she nodded. Far away, back in human space, Admiral Stone's reports were finally having an effect. The government debates were becoming action plans. Ships were being prepared. Soldiers were being trained. Humanity was slowly, ponderously beginning to honor the ancient promise. But here on this embattled world, the promise had already been kept. 17 ordinary humans and a handful of dragons had proven that two species separated by millions of years of evolution could still find harmony together. When Katie finally had to leave, her throat hurt from humming. Her tablet was full of recordings. She had been in the maintenance shaft for hours, but before she left, she tapped on the metal grate 3 times. It was a simple rhythm that meant, "I will come back." The Dragon Empress tapped back. 3 heavy strikes of her claw on the floor. The same rhythm. She understood. Katie smiled in the darkness as she crawled away. The next morning, Vincent Harper sat in his office doing paperwork. His assistant Helen knocked on the door. She looked excited about something. "There is a housekeeping staff member who wants to talk to you," Helen said. "She says it is about the dragon guest." Vincent almost said no. He was tired and frustrated. The language experts had been working all night and had made no progress. The Dragon Empress was still alone in her suite, unable to communicate. But something in Helen's voice made him agree. "Fine," he said. "Give her 5 minutes." Katie walked into his office. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were bright with determination. She put her tablet on Vincent's desk. I think I can understand her, Katie said simply. Some of it, anyway. Her language is musical. It is built in layers of harmony. Vincent stared at her. We have language experts with decades of experience. They have tried everything. They tried translation devices and computer programs, Katie explained. But her language is not really words like ours. It is closer to music. I have synesthesia. My brain processes sounds as patterns and colors. I can hear the structure in her voice. Helen leaned forward with interest. Can you prove it? Katie played a recording on her tablet. The dragon's voice filled the small office. Then Katie hummed along with it. Her human voice was thin and could not make all the sounds, but she followed the melodic pattern perfectly. That phrase means something like question or seeking, Katie explained. And this one, she hummed another pattern, means acknowledgement or agreement. Vincent looked at Helen. This seemed crazy. But they had no other options. The dragon had been in the hotel for 2 days now, and they were no closer to understanding what she wanted. All right, Vincent said slowly. You can try, but security will be present. And if anything goes wrong, we will pull you out immediately. Katie nodded. I will need to be close to her. Sound carries meaning through vibration and resonance. Distance changes it. Vincent took a deep breath. Then we will arrange it. But Katie, if this is dangerous and something happens to you? It will not be, Katie said with more confidence than she actually felt. She has been trying to communicate this whole time. She is not angry. She is lonely. They set up the meeting in the hotel's grand ballroom. It was a huge space with a high ceiling, big enough for the Dragon Empress. The walls were reinforced and strong. Vincent insisted on having security guards at every door. Medical teams waited on standby. Emergency force fields were ready to activate if needed. Katie thought all the security was unnecessary, but she understood their fear. The Empress was powerful enough to tear through the station's walls if she wanted to. A team of nervous staff members led the dragon down from her suite. They used hand gestures and holographic arrows projected on the floor to show her the way. The Empress moved with careful grace. Her scales caught the light and shimmered. Her wings were tucked tight against her body. When she entered the ballroom and saw Katie standing alone in the center, she stopped walking. Their eyes met across the large space. Katie raised her hand slowly with her palm open in a peaceful gesture. Then she sang. She had been practicing all night. She had learned to use her voice in new ways, creating overtones by shaping her mouth and throat differently. The sound that came out was far from perfect, but it carried the structure of the dragon language. It was the greeting pattern she had learned, with an added layer that meant ready or willing. The Dragon Empress became very still. Then slowly she moved forward. Each step was careful and deliberate. She was trying not to frighten Katie. The Empress settled down onto her back legs about 10 feet away. She brought her massive head down closer to Katie's eye level. She responded. The sound was gentle for a creature so large. It was layered and complex, but clearly adjusted for Katie's limited human hearing. Katie understood it. Greeting, acknowledgement, question, hope. Yes, Katie sang back in the dragon's musical language. I hear you. The Empress's eyes blazed with emotion. She started speaking faster, words tumbling over each other in cascades of harmony. Katie held up her hand. She sang a simple pattern that meant slow learning limited. The dragon checked herself. Then with visible patience, she began again. This time she was clearly teaching on purpose. She would sing a phrase, then point to herself with one claw. Her name. It was a complex sound that resonated with ancient mountains and eternal stars. Katie could not reproduce it perfectly with her human voice, but she tried her best. It was a rising and falling pattern with a sharp, clear note at the end. The Empress made a clicking sound with her tongue. It meant approval. Like stones striking together, they continued working together. The dragon would point to objects, concepts, or emotions and sing their names. Katie would record everything, repeat it, and learn. Her tablet filled with patterns and notes. Some words were simple, like water, food, or sleep. Others were incredibly complex. There were sounds that meant honor bound to ancient promises, star path between worlds, and loneliness of outliving generations. Hours passed. Vincent and Helen watched from an observation deck above the ballroom. They were amazed and anxious. The language experts crowded around monitors, recording everything. They were beginning to see the patterns that Katie had discovered on her own. Finally, the dragon sang a long, sad phrase. It was the first complex statement she had made. Katie struggled to understand it. The Empress saw her confusion. She tried again, breaking the long phrase into smaller pieces. Katie worked hard to put it all together in her mind. Came here seeking old alliance, ancient debt. Humans, but none remember, cannot speak, cannot explain, duty unfulfilled. The weight of those words struck Katie hard. You came here for us? Looking for humans specifically? The dragon sang affirmation. Then she made a cascade of sounds that Katie understood as frustration and deep sorrow. She had traveled across the entire galaxy to find humanity. She wanted to fulfill some ancient obligation. But when she arrived, no human could understand her language. The old alliances were forgotten. The ancient debts, whatever they were, could not be paid because communication was impossible. What debt? Katie sang, her voice feeling very small. What alliance? The Empress's response was long and detailed. Katie caught fragments of it. War, darkness, human gift, dragon oath, protection promised, time to honor. Someone long ago had helped the Dragon Empress's people. A human, or a group of humans. The dragons had sworn to return that help when it was needed. Now the Empress had come to fulfill that oath, but she could not make anyone understand what she was offering. Katie felt tears running down her cheeks. You have been trying to help us this whole time. The dragon sang a sad affirmation. Katie turned to the observation deck and called out loudly. We need historians. Anyone who knows about ancient human contact with other species. She is here to honor an alliance we do not remember. Vincent was already moving. He started sending urgent messages across the station's communication networks. Within an hour, the ballroom was filling with new people. Scholars, historians, and diplomats arrived. Katie served as the interpreter. Her understanding of the dragon language was growing with each exchange. An elderly historian named Linda Shaw brought up ancient records on her datapad. The records were from Earth's early space exploration age, hundreds of years ago. Here, Linda said, pointing to a passage on her screen. During the colony ship era, one vessel reported contact with a species they called sky serpents. The ship was badly damaged and far from any help. The encounter logs say the serpents shared technology that let the humans repair their engines. The colonists survived because of that help. The Dragon Empress leaned forward as Katie sang this information to her. The dragon's response was immediate and passionate. Katie translated quickly. Yes, that ship. Those humans. Her ancestor was the one who helped. The humans promised that if dragons ever needed refuge, if they ever faced extinction, humanity would shelter them. Linda's hand started shaking. That was 600 years ago. We never saw the dragons again after that. We thought the encounter logs might have been made up or misunderstood. They remember. Katie sang and spoke at the same time, translating for both groups. She remembers. Her people never forgot. And now, the Empress sang a phrase that sent chills down Katie's spine. She sang of homeworlds burning. She sang of a war that was consuming entire solar systems. She sang of her people scattered across space, dying, lost. She sang of remembering the ancient promise and coming to find the humans who had once been saved by her kind. She had come seeking sanctuary for her people. She had come to call in a debt of honor that was 6 centuries old. And until Katie, no human had even been able to ask her why she was there. The Grand Celestial Hotel floated in space near Neptune's largest moon. It was beautiful, made of glass and metal that shined like a jewel. Rich people from all over the galaxy came to stay there. The hotel's manager, Vincent Harper, was proud of his work. He had welcomed many different alien species to his hotel, but he had never seen anything like what arrived that day. The dragon ship appeared without warning. It came out of nowhere, making all the alarms go off. Every sensor on the space station started beeping and flashing. Vincent ran to the lobby, his heart beating fast. Through the large windows, he could see a ship that looked like it was made of crystal and metal mixed together. Then she came inside. The Dragon Empress was huge. She stood 12 feet tall with scales that changed color from black to deep purple. Her eyes were bright gold like melted metal. She had wings folded against her back and a long neck that curved gracefully. Her claws clicked on the marble floor as she walked. Everyone in the lobby stopped and stared. Some people backed away, looking scared. Vincent took a deep breath and walked forward. He held his translation device in his hand. It was a small machine that could speak and understand hundreds of alien languages. He smiled his best professional smile. "Welcome to the Grand Celestial Hotel," Vincent said clearly into the device.
How can we help you?
The Dragon Empress looked down at him. She opened her mouth and made a sound. But it was not like any sound Vincent had ever heard before. It was deep and high at the same time. It rumbled like thunder but also whistled like wind. The sound seemed to go right through his bones. The translation device in his hand made a strange noise. Then it showed error messages on its screen. Random symbols appeared but no words that made sense. The dragon tried again. This time she spoke slower. Her golden eyes looked frustrated. The device tried to translate. It showed words on the screen. Water, fire, ancient sky, hunger. But none of it made sense together. The words did not form a sentence. Vincent's assistant manager, Helen Price, hurried over with her own device. She tried different settings, different language databases. Nothing worked. The dragon's language was too different, too complex. The machines could not understand it at all. The Dragon Empress's long tail moved and hit the floor. The sound was loud like a crack of thunder. It left a small crack in the expensive marble. People in the lobby screamed and ran. Security guards put their hands on their weapons. But the dragon did not attack. She just stood there, looking sad and disappointed. "Get the Imperial Suite ready," Vincent whispered to Helen. "And call every language expert we can find." They used hand gestures to show the Dragon Empress to follow them. She did, walking carefully through the hotel. Her claws left small burn marks on the floor where her breath had been too warm. They took her to the biggest room in the hotel, a suite made for very important guests. The walls were extra strong and the temperature could be changed to whatever the guest needed. The dragon looked around the large room. Then she curled up on the floor, her massive body coiling like a snake. She looked at Vincent and spoke again. Those strange layered sounds filled the room. Her eyes showed intelligence and patience, but also something else. Loneliness. "I am sorry," Vincent said, even though he knew she could not understand. "We will find a way to talk to you." The dragon turned away from him. She faced the large window that showed the stars outside. She did not move again for the rest of the evening. She just sat there staring into space, completely silent. Meanwhile, far below in the lower levels of the hotel, a young woman named Katie Brooks finished cleaning one of the guest lounges. She was 23 years old and worked the night shift in housekeeping. Katie had a secret talent. She could hear music in everything around her. The hum of the engines, the whisper of the air vents, the rhythm of people walking. Her doctor called it synesthesia. It meant that her brain processed sounds differently. Every sound had a color, a texture, a pattern to her. Katie heard the other workers talking about the dragon guest. They said the translators did not work. They said the language experts were confused. They said there was a tense situation in the Imperial Suite. Then Katie heard something else. Through the air vents, a sound drifted down from the upper levels. It was the dragon's voice speaking to herself in the empty room. To other people, it might sound like just noise. But to Katie, it was music. Beautiful, complex music. It had structure and rhythm. It had patterns that repeated. It was not random at all. Katie stopped mopping and listened carefully. The dragon was singing. And Katie realized something amazing. The song had grammar. The melody carried meaning. The different layers of sound worked together like instruments in an orchestra. Each layer said something different, but they all fit together. She stood there with her mop in her hand, listening to the dragon's song echo through the station's walls. Her mind started to understand the patterns. A rising tone seemed to be a question. A falling tone seemed to be a statement. Certain rhythms repeated when the dragon seemed frustrated. Other rhythms appeared when she sounded sad. Katie's heart started beating faster. She knew she should not interfere. She was just a maid. The experts would figure it out eventually. But the more she listened, the more she understood. The dragon was not making random noise. She was speaking, teaching, hoping someone would understand. Katie made a decision. She had to try. The next day, she waited until her shift ended. Then she took the service elevator up to the floor where the Imperial Suite was located. 2 security guards stood outside the door. They looked at her suspiciously when she approached. "I am from housekeeping," Katie said, showing them her ID badge. "I wanted to check if the guest needs anything." The older guard, Pete Harris, shook his head. "No one goes in without Manager Harper's permission. That creature is dangerous." "She is not a creature," Katie said softly. "She is a guest who cannot make anyone understand her." Well, until the language experts figure it out, she stays alone, Pete said firmly. Katie nodded and walked away. But she did not leave the floor. Instead, she found a maintenance access panel near the suite's outer wall. Katie had worked at the Grand Celestial Hotel for 2 years. She knew the service passages and crawl spaces better than anyone. Inside the walls, the dragon's voice was much clearer. Katie sat in the narrow space and closed her eyes. She listened carefully to every sound. The dragon's language had 3 layers. The lowest layer was a deep rumble that felt like earth and mountains. The middle layer whistled and clicked like wind in a cave. The highest layer shimmered like starlight. Each layer seemed to carry different information. Katie pulled out her tablet computer and started taking notes. When the dragon made a sound that felt like a greeting, all 3 layers worked together in a specific pattern. When the dragon sounded frustrated, the low notes became growls and the high notes went sharp and angry. It was like reading sheet music for an instrument that did not exist yet. Hours went by. Katie knew her supervisor would be looking for her soon, but something important was happening. She was beginning to understand the patterns. The dragon kept repeating certain phrases like she was trying to teach someone. Katie started to recognize them. One phrase kept coming back again and again. It had the same melody each time, but with small changes in the high notes. It felt like a question. A searching, hopeful, repeated question, Katie whispered to herself, trying to copy the rhythm. Her human voice could not make the deep bass sounds or the complex harmonics, but she could hum the melody, follow the structure. She tried it softly in the darkness of the maintenance shaft. Inside the suite, the dragon Empress suddenly went completely silent. Katie froze. Had the dragon heard her? Then, very carefully, the dragon repeated the phrase. She said it clearer this time, slower, like a teacher helping a student. Katie tried again. She hummed the pattern as best she could. It felt like asking who or maybe where. She was not completely sure yet. The dragon responded with a different phrase. This one cascaded down like water falling. It felt like acknowledgement, like recognition, like saying, "Yes, I hear you." Someone had finally heard her. Katie's hands were shaking. She crawled forward to a ventilation grate and looked through the small openings. The Empress was standing now. Her massive head was turned toward the wall where Katie was hiding. Those golden eyes were bright with something Katie recognized immediately. "Hope. I am trying," Katie whispered. Then she hummed the phrase again. The dragon moved closer to the wall. She spoke directly to the grate where Katie was hiding. It was a complex series of sounds coming too fast for Katie to understand everything. But she caught the emotional content. Urgency, frustration, need. Katie held up her hand even though she was not sure if the dragon could see it clearly through the grate. Then she hummed a simple rising tone. It was the universal sound of a question, like saying, "Wait, can you explain?" The dragon paused. Then slowly she began again. This time she used simpler patterns. She repeated each phrase twice. She was teaching. For the next hour they communicated like this. Katie hidden in the walls, the dragon in her suite, building a bridge of sound between 2 completely different species. Neither of them knew if it would work. But they both kept trying.